Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where I cover vampires, werewolves, and all kinds of supernatural creatures. In this video we're going to be looking at Dracula from 2025 starring Caleb Jones. This movie has an amazing cast, also featuring one of my personal favorites, Christoph Waltz. I honestly had no idea what to expect going into this film, but I was pleasantly surprised. It's an interesting mix of the original novel, Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola, and some new original ideas. Without further ado, let's look at Dracula, how he becomes a vampire in this version, his unique abilities, and how this rendition tackles the story. If you enjoy videos about vampires, werewolves, and all kinds of supernatural creatures, leave a like and subscribe. Before we dive into Dracula, this video is sponsored by Aura. They've been a sponsor on the channel for a long time because it's a great service and I actually use it. What is Aura? It's everything you need to protect yourself online. Data brokers are making billions selling personal information without your consent and destroying your privacy in the process. And they make no effort to stop scammers, spammers, and who knows who else from buying it. Well, that's where Aura can help. Aura protects your privacy by identifying data brokers selling your info. Aura then takes care of the hard part, automatically removing your info from these sites and keeping it off. There's a lot of services that offer this too, but none of them offer as many features as Aura for the same price. You get all the tools you need to protect yourself online in one package. You get alerts if your personal info is found on the dark web, real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, and to help keep you even more safe, Aura has a VPN, antivirus, password manager, and more. And in the worst case scenario, if anything does happen, Aura includes 5 million in identity theft protection. Protect yourself online and try Aura free for 14 days at aura.com/KoganLawlins or click the description down below. In those 2 weeks, Aura will get to work scrubbing your personal info off these data broker sites. Thanks so much to Aura for returning to sponsor another video. The story begins in 1480 AD with a song from a music box. The song being played from this music box is actually an original song for the movie by Danny Elfman, one of the all-time great music composers. He also scored the entire film. As the song from the music box plays, we get to see how madly in love Vlad and Elizabetha are. They do everything together and are completely head over heels. Their alone time is interrupted when Vlad must go to battle. Before leaving, Elizabetha says, "Take care of yourself, my prince, my king, my life, because I cannot survive without you." His men help him put on his armor, then he goes to the chapel. The Christians are currently at war with the Muslims, but Vlad asks, "Are you sure God wills this?" Sounding like he has some doubts about having to kill so many people. Before leaving for battle, he says, "I will fight in his name, but I ask for one favor. I want him to spare my wife. If she doesn't survive, I won't be able to go on. Life without her would be meaningless." The priest says, "Calm yourself, this is blasphemy. The Lord gave you life, you must honor and serve him." Vlad says, "He was also given love. Forgive me if I can't live without it. If he takes her life, he can take mine too." Vlad then heads toward battle, and I love this part of the score. It reminds me a lot of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but that's not a bad thing. The queen is going to be escorted to a safer castle further away while the battle's taking place. Vlad and his men arrive on the battlefield, and Vlad is informed the men are hiding in the forest, and he says, "Let them come." They eventually rush the prince and his men, but Vlad dumps barrels of flammable liquid on the ground and creates a wall of flame. Vlad is ultimately successful and rises on the hill with fire at his back, bearing one of his enemies' heads on a pike. What remains of his attackers don't look too excited. Vlad's armor looks really cool here, and the helmet resembles a dragon. It is implied in the Bram Stoker novel that Vlad the Impaler and Count Dracula are one and the same. The real-life Vlad was known for being a member of the Order of the Dragon, aka Dracula, so Dracula has often been associated with dragons. One thing I have to say about this helmet is how does he see anything? Is he seeing through the two nose holes? Imagine trying to fight a battle and this is all you can see. At the same time the battle began, the princess was ambushed and forced to try and escape on her own. Right after Vlad's battle is concluded, he is informed that she was ambushed and goes after her. The princess is riding her horse through this bear trap minefield. All the traps are just under the snow so you can't see them. Eventually the princess's horse goes down and it's not looking good. The men begin tapping the ground as to not step on a trap. Elizabetha probably should have done the same thing because she steps right into one. As the men are walking her down about to finish the job, Vlad arrives. He races towards her as fast as he can, but his horse inevitably goes down and he has to run the rest of the way. He easily dispatches 2 men and throws his sword at the third, impaling him in the back. However, it was too late. The enemy had already stabbed her. Vlad runs to her and only gets a few short fleeting moments with her before she dies. Vlad returns to the priest angry. The one thing he asked for his wife to be spared, and yet she is dead, and he didn't even get to say goodbye. He demands the priest tell God to send her back, but the priest says that's not possible. Vlad is absolutely furious at this point. He says, "My soul is stained with the blood of our enemies, whom I have killed in his name." The priest simply says in a scared voice, "I don't have the answers, my prince. I'm only his humble messenger." Vlad responds in a strange calmness. "Good. I have a message that I want you to deliver to him." He then grabs the staff that the priest was holding, snaps it in half, and runs him through with it, then picking him up off the ground. His men back up in fear, and Vlad says, "Tell your God until he brings back my wife. My life no longer belongs to him." He slams the priest onto the table, then looks up and sees the crucifix. He sticks out his arms as if he's mocking the crucifixion. Thunder and lightning erupt, and the eyes of Jesus on the cross begin to cry blood, and a strange, unnatural wind swirls around the room. His men then grab him and carry him out of the chapel. We now skip to 400 years later, but I want to talk a little more about what happened here. First of all, this film takes a lot of the love story aspects from Francis Ford Coppola's film, as the original novel was not all that focused on the love story. Also, we never know how Dracula became a vampire in the novel, whereas this event was obviously the catalyst. Something different about this film and the 1992 version is Dracula's reason for anger. In the 1992 version, he's extra angry because his wife took her own life, meaning she will be damned to hell. However, in this version, she was killed, meaning she still went to heaven.
When did you arrive?
Around 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
It's now 400 years later, and this seems to be some kind of hospital or medical center. A doctor is walking with a colleague, and they quickly make their way to the chapel. Waiting for them is a priest. We are never actually given his name, just priest or father. Dr. Dumont finds the priest and assumes he's praying, but he's actually enjoying some food and wine. The doctor explains that the hospital's administration is not happy about a priest being here. The medical establishment and the church don't always go so well together. Science versus religion. The doctor leads the priest through the building into a dungeon-like room that's very dark. In the middle of the room is a woman chained to the floor. The doctor reads her file. 25 years old, from Bologna, Italy. The husband of this woman is the nephew of the queen, which is why this is being kept very secret. She was brought here because during her wedding, a clergyman arrived and this drove her into a frenzy, which is how he captured and brought her here. The priest then picks up her file and reads this. Born on the 18th of March, 1775. The doctor thinks it must be a clerical error, but the priest isn't so sure. If this is her actual birthday, it would make her 130 years old. The priest is going to conduct a few experiments to see if this is truly a creature of the devil. The first symptoms are longer than average life and an allergy to symbols of our Lord. He takes a closer look at the murder weapon, her teeth. The father says his order has been studying this phenomenon for more than 400 years and himself for more than 30. According to the priest, the doctor here is the first person to ever capture one of these creatures alive. The doctor wonders what exactly is it that he captured, and the priest says, a vampire. The vampire tries to use her charm on the doctor, but the priest quickly interferes and wants a closer look at her fangs. 2 oversized canines. He says contrary to popular belief, vampires adapt very well to light in general. It's direct rays they cannot take. The priest then opens up the window and the direct sunlight burns her skin, causing it to smolder. The doctor is blown away by this. He can't believe what he's seeing. I feel like at this point the priest is being sarcastic and says, this could be just another anomaly of nature, so we have to continue until we have irrefutable proof. He then pulls a cross from his things and presents it to the vampire. She hisses at it and it bursts into flames. The priest says, well, I think we have all the proof we need, doctor. Don't you? He wants to ask the vampire Maria a few questions and promises to give her something she wants if she cooperates. Blood. He cuts the doctor's assistant and gives her a few drops of blood. He then asks Maria to show her neck. He sees a bite mark and states she is not a first-generation vampire. They have been searching for the source for 400 years. Maria then says, my master. The priest wants to know who this master is and where to find him, but she says he will find you. He comes to find his princess. So now the priest knows they need to find this mysterious princess, and they might finally find the source. Something interesting to note about this rendition is there is no Renfield type character, nobody that went to see the Count prior to Jonathan. Instead, Maria kind of functions as one of Dracula's brides as well as the Renfield in this film. We now meet Jonathan Harker as he makes his way to Count Vlad's castle at the foot of the Carpathian Mountains. The carriage drops him off far away from the castle, and he asks if the driver will help him with his luggage, but the driver refuses and also gives him a cross to take with him. Jonathan says he doesn't believe in God, and the driver says, "Well, pray he believes in you." This kind of reminded me of the line from Constantine, but with a twist. Angela says, "I don't believe in the devil," and Constantine says, "You should. He believes in you." Jonathan is being stalked by some wolves on the way to the castle, and I wonder if this wolf is Dracula. He's been known to shapeshift into creatures of the night, including wolves. Jonathan arrives at the castle and is startled by the Count, who has a look reminiscent of Gary Oldman from Bram Stoker's Dracula. He welcomes Jonathan and snuffs out his torch with his bare hand, and then suddenly all the candles in the castle light. Jonathan is led to the dining room where a large dinner has been prepared. Jonathan comments that for such a large castle he has not seen any staff, and Dracula says, "They stay hidden." Jonathan is there on behalf of his legal firm because they want to purchase a property that belongs to the Count, the opposite of what happens in Bram Stoker's Dracula. In the original novel and the 1992 film, it's Dracula who wants to buy the property. Anyway, Dracula sees the cross that was given to Jonathan and asks if he believes in God. Jonathan sees the cross as well and nervously replies, "Oh, well, not really, it's just something the driver gave me." When Jonathan looks away, Dracula uses some kind of telekinesis to make the cross slide into the fire, and when it ignites, he gets a feeling of pleasure. He also grabs a rat and crushes it, draining its blood into a cup and drinking it. The Count says enough talking for tonight, and Jonathan retires to his room. Dracula goes into another room and plays a gramophone that Jonathan had been fascinated by. The song being played is the same one that came from the music box at the beginning of the film. He then tells a statue to keep an eye on Jonathan.
Yes?
My apologies for disturbing at such a late hour.
The priest goes to meet with the vampire Maria's husband. Of course, he doesn't know that she's a vampire. He wants to know about her condition, and the priest is purposely vague. He wants to see Maria's room to see if he can find any clues about her master, or this princess. In the middle of a book, he finds a page that's been ripped from another book, and it says, Princess Elizabetha. At the castle, Jonathan is reading a book, and there's a page missing. The same one found by the priest, so Dracula must have given this page to Maria. In the middle of the night, Jonathan's curiosity gets the better of him and he goes searching around the castle, stumbling upon Dracula's coffin. He finds him there sleeping, and without even opening his eyes, Dracula says, "You should not have left your room." He is then knocked unconscious by a gargoyle. When Jonathan awakes, he is tied up and surrounded by Dracula and his stone gargoyle minions. He must have used some kind of sorcery to bring them to life. Dracula says he sustains himself on fresh blood. Human is preferred. So this sounds like he needs to feed on at least a little bit of blood in order to survive. He also says human is preferred. We seen earlier he fed on rat blood, so it doesn't hurt vampires, but it probably doesn't taste or sustain them in the same way as human blood. He explains that life is difficult and death is the ultimate peace, something God denies him. Jonathan asks why God would do that. He's nothing but love and mercy. Dracula says, "I thought you were not a believer." And Jonathan replies, "I am now." This makes the Count laugh, but he is so old and starved for blood, his laugh is strained and harsh sounding. Dracula wants to know what his final wish is, and Jonathan wants to hear his story. At first, Dracula is reluctant, but decides to indulge him. He seems to really enjoy Jonathan's humor. He's then painfully lowered to the floor and put in a chair. Vlad begins by saying this: "He is denied death by God, even though he was one of his most faithful servants." Then, his wife was taken. We see Vlad putting roses on his wife's grave. For 400 years, he has awaited her return. Jonathan is curious how Vlad knows she will come back. Vlad says, "Sometimes pure souls can be reincarnated, and my beloved was the purest of them all." The problem is, Dracula does not know when, where, or how she will be reincarnated. The search was difficult. The Black Death spread all over Europe for centuries. Nearly 200 million souls were decimated, half of them women. This made his search very difficult because all the remaining women were gathered in holy places, where he is not welcome. So it sounds like Dracula cannot enter a church or a holy place, and it seems ordinary vampires cannot either. The doctor earlier stated that Maria specifically requested that her marriage not take place in a church, most likely because she can't go in one. Even just the sight of a clergyman was enough to drive her into a frenzy. Dracula was so lonely, he became jealous of those that death claimed. Defeated from his search, he returns to his wife's grave and lays on top of it. He did this many times until he lost all faith. One day he went up into his room, broke the window, and threw himself from the castle. Except, he did not die. So he did it again, and again. As he said, death is a privilege that God denies him. We also see at this time the gargoyles on the castle are already alive. Dracula says after a while, all desire disappears, even the desire to die. He still had the hope of finding his love, but he couldn't search everywhere. He had to find a way to make her come to him. He holds up a fancy looking vial and Jonathan asks if it's poison. Vlad corrects him, saying it's a fragrance he developed for over a century. He traveled to the city of Baghdad, known for their magical gardens of 1,001 flowers. He then continued to Kannauj in India, where he learned to capture the souls of the most sensitive flowers. But it was only back in Europe where his research came to fruition. First in the colorful fields of grass in France, then in the heart of Italy. Florence is where it was created. The man in the shop hands Vlad a bottle of fragrance and says, "I think this is the one." He tries it out right there in the shop, and as soon as he does, all the women begin to turn around and fawn over him, even some coming in from outside. Vlad says it was more powerful than he ever could have imagined. This perfume must be some kind of alchemy or combination of fragrance and magic. We then see Vlad using this fragrance to charm courts all over Europe through the years while looking for Elizabetha. This is a very interesting sequence set to music with everyone dancing. The costumes are very cool. Vlad jokingly says, "I have to admit, this period was not the most unpleasant." Finally, his journey ended at the great French court of Versailles. He says King Louis, whose number I forget, was having all of his nobles and artists come together so he could keep a closer eye on them. There was no doubt in Vlad's mind that if Elizabetha had returned, this is where she would be. He says, "I had never been so close to finding her." The woman looked similar to Elizabetha, but it was not her.
Elizabetha.
No, I'm not.
Now Vlad's mission was seemingly impossible and he was becoming enraged. He now felt it necessary to entrust his search for Elizabetha to others. He bares his fangs, then begins biting people at the party. When he bites one woman, her wig falls off, revealing her long red hair. So this is where he turned Maria. We see him bite at least half a dozen people, but they were all women. He does not turn any men. I guess this would be considered Dracula's brides. Jonathan asks him how many he turned that night, but Vlad says it doesn't matter, because they were all as unlucky as him, meaning they could not find her either. After another defeat, he returns to his wife's grave again, looking somewhat aged now, and he becomes enraged and pushes the lid off of her grave, jumps inside, and breaks the top of the coffin open, finding nothing but dust. Since then, he has rarely left the castle in hopes that one day his disciples will find his Elizabetha. We see that over time he accumulated a massive amount of wealth. Presumably he still owned land and he was still a prince of Wallachia after all. Jonathan says, "It seems that you know what you're talking about when it comes to love, and so you must spare me." He is in love himself and about to be married as soon as he returns. Dracula asks what she looks like, and Jonathan tells him to look inside the locket he has. Vlad takes the locket from around Jonathan's neck and opens it. When he sees the image inside, he is at a loss for words, and he hears Elizabetha's voice. He begins making strange noises and seems overcome with emotion. It's her. Vlad grabs Jonathan and says, "This woman is mine, young man, but I will spare your life for finding her for me." What are the odds he would spend 4 centuries searching the world, and the key to finding Elizabetha walked right into his castle? He leaves Jonathan prisoner and begins shouting at his gargoyle servants. He wants them to refill his vial of fragrance, fetches horses. He needs to be clean, to be beautiful. He needs lots of blood. Something else this film leaves out is the voyage of the Demeter. The ship is never mentioned and Dracula just kinda shows up in Paris. Also, there's no mention of him needing to be on Transylvanian soil, and he doesn't bring coffins full of dirt with him, so I guess that's not a thing in this version. As we've seen before in his life, he traveled all over the world, so he's clearly not confined to the castle like other versions of Dracula. Another difference in this story is that it takes place in France instead of England. Back in Paris, the priest presents the page he found to the doctor and explains more about what's going on. They know he has been searching for his first love for 400 years. He has a book that carries all the findings of his congregation. The book says this: "It is likely those created are the way they are as a result of a divine curse. If God can give life, then consequently, he can also give death. But he can refuse in cases of great offense or blasphemy, such as spearing a priest and renouncing God. The offender will be condemned to wander the earth for all time. But even more interesting, God can forgive the offender. In the event of full repentance, death will be granted and the curse lifted." So somehow his congregation figured out that the vampire curse can be reversed by repenting his sins. This also means if they destroy the source, then all infected by him will be cured as well. This all sounds great, but the doctor wants to know how they kill such a creature.
Do you drive a stake through his heart with a hammer and cut off his head?
I like how the priest says this like it's totally obvious while the doctor's clearly shocked. Apparently his book also mentions that garlic can drive vampires away, but the priest does not believe it. So it's not clear if garlic would actually work against vampires or not. There's also no mention of silver harming them in this story. The most important thing for the priest and the doctor is finding this woman that Dracula is looking for. Then they can find him. Just then the doctor's assistant says, "That's weird. The woman in that picture looks just like the woman in the waiting room." They all go out immediately to check, and sure enough, it's Mina, who looks exactly like Elizabetha. Turns out by chance that Mina had come to see her friend Maria, the one who is a vampire. They want to ask her a few questions about Maria. She had only just met Maria a few days before the wedding where she went crazy. Mina said she seemed very excited, probably because she knew she had finally found what her master was searching for. She becomes more candid and says that she is unsure of her wedding to Jonathan. He's a wonderful man, but she feels as if she doesn't belong in this time. She thinks this sounds insane, but the priest says quite the contrary. They have her write down her address so they can follow up with any questions and she leaves. Next we see Dracula all covered up, wearing a disguise, and he's invited into a convent or church with nuns. Before he said he could not enter holy places, but I guess something changed. He uncovers himself, and when the woman returns with food for him, she is terrified. She says he has no power in the house of God. But that's not true. Using some kind of magic, he is able to make every nun in the building unable to move, and he begins controlling them like puppets on a string. He makes them all lift him up in this odd but strangely creepy mass of people, and he begins feeding on them. Back at the castle, Jonathan tries to escape by making a makeshift rope and climbing down the wall. Unfortunately, the gargoyles spot him, try to stop him, which leads to him falling off the wall. He doesn't die though. He's just knocked unconscious and slides onto the ice. The gargoyles try to follow, but they are too heavy and break through the ice, which allows Jonathan to get away. Like I said before, we skipped the voyage of the Demeter, and Dracula has now arrived in Paris. This is also the first time we get to see Dracula in his young form again. So by drinking enough blood, he is able to appear as his younger self again. At one point, he says that he actually doesn't like drinking blood, despite it tasting good. This is most likely how he ended up looking the way he did. When he arrived at the convent, he had said that he hadn't eaten in centuries, so it's been a very long time since Dracula has drank a large amount of blood. We did see him drink blood from a rat, and he said that human blood is preferred, so possibly the animal or rat blood might have had an effect on his appearance as well. When Dracula arrives, he sets Maria free and rewards her for finding Mina, and they immediately go to get her. Maria arrives at Mina's and says she's all better now, so they go out on the town together with Maria's friend, the Count. When the Count first sees Mina, there is no doubt in his mind that it's her. She doesn't take to him right away, but as they go to a fair and the night rolls on, she begins to warm up to him. The three of them end up in the Count's hotel room watching the fireworks from the balcony. Maria leaves to get her some hot chocolate, and finally Dracula gets some alone time with Mina, and he pulls out the music box. He says many people believe it was invented by the Swiss in the 1800s, but he found this one at a merchant's table in Constantinople that dates from the 15th century. No doubt he bought this himself while he was on his travels. She asks if it still works, and he says of course, and winds it up, letting it play that familiar tune.
Seems so familiar.
When Mina hears the song, she says it sounds so familiar, like from a memory, but she doesn't know where or when. It also seems that she is getting flashbacks of her time with the Count centuries ago. He explains that when his wife wanted him to come to her, she would play that tune and it would echo through the castle. Mina is reluctant to accept these memories, so she states that she is Mina and she is getting married in a few weeks. The Count apologizes and says it's just that she looks so much like his wife. It has brought back painful memories. He then gives her the music box and says, "A gift can never be refused." Just then, Maria comes back and sweeps Mina away to watch the fireworks. After, the Count walks Mina home, and when she enters the house, she is greeted by the doctor, the priest, and Jonathan, who has finally returned. He is not in good shape at all, and the priest reveals that the castle he barely escaped from was owned by none other than the Count. And Maria was not released from the hospital, but rather escaped, knocking out 3 guards in the process and almost draining his clerk completely dry of blood. They also reveal that he uses a special perfume that puts his victims in a trance, and this was most likely used on her. This is all very shocking for Mina to hear, because he came off so charming. She wants to see Jonathan, but he's too weak right now, so she goes to her room. While in there, she uses the music box and begins having more flashbacks of her old life. As she is remembering, the Count appears in the room right behind her. Maybe he heard the music box. She's obviously startled, but he assures her he means no harm. She tells him to leave and is very flustered, but eventually calms down. She accuses the Count of lying and using his magical perfume, but he reveals that he never used it on her, meaning her feelings for him were genuine. He says he will tell her who he is if she does the same. He asks if she remembers the last thing she said to him. "Take care of yourself, my prince, my king." And then suddenly, she finishes the last part. "My life, because I cannot survive without you." Just then, it's like she finally remembers everything at once and embraces him. She wants to be turned now, to be with the Count forever. Something I find interesting is that in the 1992 movie, it's never clear whether Mina is truly a reincarnation of Elizabetha. It seems more like Dracula used sorcery and brainwashed her along with turning her into a vampire, and this is what made her believe she was his long-lost love. However, Mina was still her own person and very much in love with Jonathan. However, in this film, it seems that Mina is in fact 100% a reincarnation of Elizabetha. She even speaks of feeling like she doesn't fit in this time before even meeting the Count, so it couldn't have been him influencing her. Also, like I mentioned before, the love story and idea of Elizabetha being reincarnated was not in the original novel at all, rather an invention of the 1992 film. But since then, it has become a reoccurring theme in many Dracula films. So Mina is awoken as Elizabetha and turned into a vampire. When the Count was giving his speech, he threw his vial of perfume in the fire, breaking it. Eventually, downstairs, the priest smells something. The same thing they smelled in the hospital after Maria broke out and the clerk was drained of blood. He realizes the Count is here. They rush upstairs, but they're too late. Mina is gone. They are now going to need Jonathan to lead them back to his castle in Romania. They're going to need help and money, so first they go see Maria's fiancé, Henry. It's a good thing they did go to see him, because Maria returned and was about to kill him when they entered the house. She charges at the priest and he shoots her, much to the shock of Henry. He demands an explanation, but that's when Maria stands back up, her voice now sounding ethereal and demonic.
What have you done?
My daughter.
She stands back up and knocks Henry aside effortlessly and begins choking the priest. These vampires are definitely stronger than a human, but not lift up a car strong. Jonathan grabs a sword off a hanger and cuts Maria's head off, but her body is still moving. The priest then grabs a cross and shoves it through her heart, killing her for good. Like the priest said before, you must cut off the head and stake them. It seems like cutting off the head isn't enough. I guess it's possible they could reattach their head or regrow a new one like that alien from Men in Black. Henry now most likely wants some revenge of his own on the Count for turning his wife, although she was turned over 100 years ago, so she's been a vampire ever since she met Henry. Anyway, Dracula arrives in Romania with Elizabetha in a coffin. So I guess he does still travel in a coffin because direct sunlight can burn him. It's actually never clearly shown if Dracula is burned by direct sunlight, but presumably he would be. Although we did see him travel all over the world in the sun and he didn't get burnt. So it's possible, like the original story, that Dracula himself is not harmed by sunlight. The men working for the Count refer to him as Master and inform him that the priest is already hot on his trail and he should leave the castle. But Dracula says, there's no need, he's finally home. He also pays the men and says their services won't be required anymore. Even in the 1992 film, Dracula had the Romani working for him. He shows Elizabetha around the castle and tells all the gargoyles that the princess has finally returned. Dracula is walking through the castle when he hears the music box. It's the first time in 4 centuries he's heard that music in this castle, played by Elizabetha. They only get to enjoy themselves for a short time before cannon fire begins bombarding the castle. Henry brought a whole militia with him to fight Dracula. He leaves Elizabetha in the room to see what's going on. The soldiers begin fighting with the stone gargoyles and another group finds his coffin. Thinking he's inside, they surround the coffin and fire a hail of bullets. Before they can confirm he's dead, Dracula appears behind Jonathan and says, "I told you I would spare your life. Don't make me go back on my word." He then only knocks Jonathan unconscious but proceeds to kill everyone else brutally. So even after escaping the castle and bringing the men here, he still wasn't going to kill Jonathan. I guess he is a man of his word. As Dracula kills the last soldier, it's just him and the priest remaining. He shuts the door with his telekinesis and talks with the priest. The Count says, "So, you are the priest who has chased my people for so many years." The priest replies, "Yes, but rest assured I did not come here to fight you." Dracula says, "He fights God. He's not interested in his servants." The priest corrects him. "You're not fighting God. You're fighting yourself." The Count tries to explain that he is killed in God's name, but the priest says, "Why would God want us to kill his creations? Men kill in their own name, and you're about to do it again." This makes the Count stop and think for a moment. He gets kind of angry and says, "Those are all nice words, but God sent you here to kill me." But the priest says, "God sent me here to save you." This disarms the Count and he is momentarily speechless. The priest urges Dracula to repent for his salvation. Dracula says, "She is my salvation." And the priest says, "And you are her damnation." Just then there is another cannon blast and Elizabetha screams, causing the Count to run away. While the Count rushes to Elizabetha, the priest prepares his stake. Dracula holds Elizabetha and kisses her and tells her if he dies, the curse will be lifted and she will be free. Just then the priest arrives and urges Dracula to let her return to light and himself to God. Surprisingly, Dracula says goodbye and closes the door, trapping Elizabetha inside, and he is face to face with the priest. He says, 400 years ago, I asked a priest that God spare my wife. He did not. Can he hear my prayer this time?" The priest replies, "Whether he hears you or not, only you can change destiny, my son. Save her and you'll be in peace for eternity." Dracula gives a subtle smile and opens his arms, welcoming the priest to stake him. He says, "Hurry up before I change my mind." The priest says a prayer and drives the stake through the Count's heart while Elizabetha cries on the other side of the door. One thing I noticed was he didn't cut Dracula's head off like the other vampire, but maybe because he's willingly accepted death, it's not necessary. Also, maybe you can stake them and it works, but just cutting off the head won't work alone. In his final moments, Dracula reverts to his old man state. Again, kind of the opposite of what happens in the 1992 film. Dracula says his final goodbye and turns to dust. Just then, all the fire and candles in the castle go out, as if it was being magically sustained by him. After Dracula dies, Mina is reverted to a human. But even stranger, all the stone gargoyles turn into children. So all these gargoyles were kids that Dracula cursed or turned into gargoyles to be his slaves, I guess. We don't know for sure that Dracula cursed them. It's possible they were cursed for some other reason, but that's never revealed. Jonathan sees Mina grieving over the Count and walks away looking sad. I'm not sure if Mina is still going to marry him after all this. I would guess not. Jonathan just kind of gets cucked by Dracula. Since she is actually Elizabetha, she's not snapped out of it at the end like the original. Also, Dracula finally got to say goodbye to his wife, but now Elizabetha has to live on without him, so kinda sad for her. At the very end, we see Dracula's spirit float into the sky, signifying that he has finally gone to heaven. That's my video on Dracula: A Love Tale. Honestly, this is probably in my top 5 Dracula movies. Series don't count. But overall, this movie was very enjoyable. It's less of a gothic horror and more of a fantasy and a love story. There's not many horror elements at all. No jump scares or terrifying makeup. Nonetheless, I really like Caleb Jones' version of Dracula. He played the old and young Dracula perfectly. He really felt like someone from another time. Of course, Christoph Waltz was great as the priest, easily the best character outside of Dracula himself. The Van Helsing type character is always the best other than Dracula. Jonathan's role was really minimized in this movie and there was no Renfield, but honestly it didn't take away from the story for me. I think it used just the right amount of inspiration from the original film and its own ideas. If you haven't seen this movie, I would 100% recommend it. The 2024 Dracula film was obviously amazing, but there is something special about this one. If you like Dracula and somehow have not seen my video on Bram Stoker's Dracula, definitely check that out. It's probably one of my favorite videos I've ever made. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos about vampires, werewolves, and all kinds of supernatural creatures. Of course, if there's any movies, TV shows, or video games you want me to cover, please leave them in the comments down below. As always, an extra shout out to all my members for supporting the channel. I really appreciate everyone that's ever purchased a membership even for a month. It means a lot. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.